Good afternoon. I'd like to call the July 3rd, 2012 City Council meeting to order. Please rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Francisco. Hodgkiss. Here. House. Here. Murillo. Here. Rouse. White. Mayor Schneider.
Here. And item number 1.
Item 1, Employee Recognition Service Award Pins.
Yes, Madam Mayor and members of the council, as you know, every month we present service award pins to those employees who are celebrating important anniversaries, and we will be presenting several this month, and we also have one employee that actually was due last month but wasn't able to make it here to receive a pin. So I'd like to read their names into the record. And first, with 5 years, Yesenia Gomez, who's Administrative Specialist in Administrative Services. Peggy Burbank, Redevelopment Specialist. Now I think she's a planner in Community Development. Dan Gullett, Associate Planner in Community Development. Brian D'Amore, Supervising Engineer in Public Works. Jose Zarate, Streets Maintenance Worker 1 in Public Works. Jim Dewey, our Facilities and Energy Manager in Public Works. And Cameron Benson, the Creeks Restoration Clean Creek Manager in Parks and Rec. With 10 years, Michael Berman, who's a Project Planner in Community Development. With 15 years, Bob Kendall, Fire Engineer. Also with 15 years, Rob Oshiro, Fire Engineer. And Joseph Tieso, Fire Captain. Robin Hamlin, Administrative Assistant in Public Works. And Steve Corral, who's a Treatment Plant Technician in Public Works. With 25 years, Jose Yanez, who's an accounting assistant in the finance department. And with 30 years, Barbara Barker, who's the human resource manager in administrative services. And here to receive his pin that was actually last month is Matt Gruel with 25 years, and he works in the shop in Public Works.
Come on up, Matt. There you are. There's your pin.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Matt Gruel began his career with the City of Santa Barbara in June of 1987. He worked the first 2 years as an equipment technician, performing the maintenance and repair of police fleet vehicles. On October 6, 1989, Matt was promoted to heavy equipment technician, where he remained for 21 years, performing repairs to all city fire department fire apparatus. On June 6, 2010, Matt was promoted to his current position of automotive service writer. Matt has received numerous commendations over the years. He was awarded Employee of the Month on 4 occasions for excellent customer service, for going above and beyond the call of duty, and for his persistence when faced with challenging technical problems. Matt has been an ASE certified master truck and automotive technician for many years, and has been certified by the California State Fire Marshal's Office for the past 23 years, becoming a Level 2 fire mechanic. Matt performs many customer service duties in his day-to-day activities. He constantly strives to help other city departments in their daily operations by minimizing downtime of city fleet equipment. He oversees all repairs and services performed in fleet management to ensure that all tasks are performed in a timely manner. Matt currently resides in Goleta with his wife, Suzanne. They've been married for 10 years. He's very close to his family and spends time caring for his elderly mother. In addition, he's an avid motorcyclist and enjoys riding his Ducati motorcycle. And he's a loyal San Francisco Giants and 49ers fan. In his spare time, Matt likes to travel and enjoys photography and the latest electronic devices. Matt, it's my pleasure to honor you today for your 25 years of service with the City of Santa Barbara. On behalf of the City Council, congratulations on your admirable achievement. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Okay. Got to get that camera ready, Dave.
Well, I'll say it truly has been a privilege working for the City of Santa Barbara for these past 25 years. Really enjoyed working here very much. I expected to stay here maybe 5, but found out that wasn't going to be the case. My first assignment was to work on the what were then the Cushmans that the meter maids use, which are officially called car markers or parking enforcement officers. I enjoyed that very much, and the meter maids were fantastic to work with. Enjoyed that very much. They kind of welcomed me to the city, as it were. I'm especially proud of my association with the fire department, who I worked for 21 years, and that was a special time for me, the training involved in working with the fire personnel as well. And lastly, our crew at Fleet Management that I work with now, they've all brought a lot of prior experience to the city, and which is extremely helpful for my job. We really have quite a qualified crew there that brought experience prior to working here, and it's just great. So that's pretty much it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No, there aren't, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Public comment. I have 2 minutes up at the speaker, and we'll start with Stephen Mead and be followed by Rebecca Neal.
Madam Mayor, distinguished council members, I want to thank you on behalf of Santa Barbara Summer Solstice. I am your Vice President of Summer Solstice, and it was great to have all of you there. Councilman Rouse, we will find a place for you next year. The three-day festival was a great success, very trouble-free. The professional staff and the volunteers, I think, all did an exceptional job. With your help, we were able to put on, I think, a great three-day festival. To take a look at one of the economic impacts of Solstice, it was an overwhelming success for the hotels, 20% above average rate for 2 years ago, I believe 2010. We're about 20% above on all rates. Canary Hotel sold out 4 or 5 weeks in advance at rates of $300 or better. Just in my travels, talking to people like East Beach Wine, who moved into the La Arcana about 2 years ago. Very best Saturday they ever had was this Saturday, so that's good. Also, T-shirt sales were very good. And if you take a look at our Google search, which was kind of nice, you took at Google and just type in the word solstice, we came up top 3 above Stonehenge. I don't know what you're going to do in Google AdWords to buy that kind of coverage, but the Santa Barbara Solstice Festival did it. We thank you for it. I know all the police officers that you guys funded, and obviously your funding of our line item was very well appreciated, and we hope that next year we can look forward to the same sort of funding. And remember, folks, it's very difficult work for those police officers getting all of those Brazilian girls home safely. So we hope to have the same measure of cooperation next year. You know what Santa Barbara Solstice is. The Summer Solstice Festival is a wonderful 3-day event. We thank you again for having it. It is unique. It's a good place to put the arts. It's a good place to showcase what it is Santa Barbara is, which is a very unique destination. What we are not is Flowtopia. We are not the West Beach Music Festival. We are well run, and we appreciate all of you in helping us get there. Thank you so much.
For an excellent festival. Thank you, Stephen. Rebecca Neal will be followed by Kate Longstory.
Greetings to the City Council members and our mayor. Thank you for hearing us. I didn't exactly plan on coming today, but I thought that this matter is important enough for it to be brought to your attention and the attention of the public in general. In the most recent Senate bill passed Law H.R. 3200 in Section 2521, page 2001, paragraph 1, there is most people don't read these things because they're very long. I happen to be a reader. I found this in here. There is to be a chip implanted in people. This is not sci-fi. I'm not making it up. This is real Senate legislation that was passed. How is this device registry supposed to work? Shouldn't we be telling our citizens what is going on with this? It sounds, when you read the legislation, it's so broad. It could be implanted in anybody. There is no specific mandate as to who gets it or why they should get it, whether the military should get it, people who go into the military. I think this is a very important matter, and it sounds so much like science fiction that it's a little bit scary, to tell the truth. I think that people should be aware of this matter. I try to keep myself up to date with as much legislation as I can possibly get my hands on or read. This includes anything on the internet. I appreciate Kathy Murillo's attention to certain things that I've brought to her attention. I thought that I would bring this to your attention today, and I really appreciate you just listening to that few minutes of me talking. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think Mr. House has a question
I just
for
wanted
you.
to ask you, would you repeat the number of the HR?
I certainly will. It's Senate Bill H.R. 3200, Section 2521, page 2001. It goes further on page 2004, and it starts off in paragraph 1.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Kate Longstory, be the final speaker.
Mayor Schneider and members of the Santa Barbara City Council, I have owned the Orange House just up from the Mission for 21 years. I was never late in my payments. The interest rate was at 8%, and when the LIBOR fell to 4%, it was time for a loan modification. GMAC said that modifications were only for homeowners in trouble. So you had to be in default, so don't pay your mortgage. In 3 months, our house was in foreclosure. When I called and said, wait a minute, we're supposed to get a loan modification, they said, you haven't been paying since July. Oh, excuse me. That's wrong, I said. We stopped paying in October. Well, you don't qualify for a loan modification. You're going to lose your house. This was the beginning of a nightmare that has happened for over 18 million homeowners. Only corporations can get money from the banks now. So our homes are being bought up, and we will become a nation of renters. They said that the auction on April 16th was postponed, so I didn't worry about it. When I found out that my house had been sold at a foreclosure auction that day, I was at the bell tower. And somebody talked me down. I will no longer take that route because I am supported by love.
Thank you.
Excuse me. This is a grant deed that says my husband is a single man and that he gave my house, our house, to Ishmael Lopez. It is a forged signature.
Okay, your time
and
is up.
This is, well, you know, the fact that it's an upsetting situation
understand.
triggers the Americans with Disabilities Act. When Chuck was here
Kate
with
Longstory, your
cerebral...
time is up, please. Thank you.
I am submitting this. It's at the DA's, and if there is not an investigation to the 17 illegal practices, I'll be back on the bell tower, I guess. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes public comment. Move on to the consent calendar. Is there any items to pull off the consent calendar? Number 3? 4? Any other items? Okay. Okay. And I'll have, okay, and there's a couple, number 13 we'll pull off. Do you have some items to read? Go ahead.
Item number 2, records destruction for the police department. Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the council of the city of Santa Barbara relating to the destruction of records held by the police department in the administrative services, patrol, and chief's staff divisions. Item 3, records destruction for fire department. Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the council of the city of Santa Barbara relating to the destruction of records held by the fire department in the administration division. Item 4, approve local share of funding for bicycle transportation account. Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the council of the city of Santa Barbara certifying that the city will make the required 10% local share of funding available for the Cacique Bicycle and Pedestrian Bridge Replacement Project should a bicycle transportation account award be made in the year 2012. And item 13, Santa Barbara Zoological Gardens lease. Recommendation that council introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara approving a 35-year lease agreement with a 15-year lease option between the City of Santa Barbara and the Santa Barbara Zoological Gardens Foundation for continued lease of the property being operated as the Santa Barbara Zoological Gardens, commonly known as the Santa Barbara Zoo.
Thank you. Without further objection, we'll waive further reading. Item number 4 is the local share of the bicycle transportation that was already read. Mr. Hotchkiss, you had a question on that?
I do have a number of questions on this. Mr. Allen, are you the man?
Be the man.
Great. This requires a promised outlay by the city of $365,959. Is that the streets fund or the general fund?
It would be streets funds.
Okay. So in that fund, we've just taken on comparable amount actually when the state highway. I'm just wondering why you think this is so compelling that we do this now. That bridge is narrow. It's, when you look at it, it's hard to imagine that it's going to cost $1.5 million to replace it. Kind of fill me in here. Why is this so important?
Well, this particular area has come up as a concern by the residents in that area. Police department has had a number of calls for service due to individuals loitering in the area. It's difficult for the police department to get from one side of the bridge to the other if they're in pursuit of somebody who may have created a problem. So we're able to address a number of issues in the area. We also are partnering with the Creeks Division to do some creek improvements and the possibility of using some additional funding, whether it be creeks or some type of additional grant money, to address some problems with the creeks as well. We also will be looking at other grant opportunities, Measure A grants like we saw on the agenda. We are going to be talking, later on the agenda, where we have opportunity to go after Measure A money to be part of the matching funds for this. But we've identified that this is being a concern. It's been in our capital improvement program for in excess of 11 years to address this particular bridge. And we see this as an opportunity. There's no guarantee that we're going to be awarded the grant by Caltrans. It's a competitive process. First word we have with them is maybe, maybe not, because of the time frame. But if we are awarded the grant, we will have to come with the matching funds, and we're going to look at other funding as well as looking at the street funding to make this happen if we are awarded the grant.
Well, insofar as the police part is concerned, a wider pedestrian or bike path isn't going to solve the problem. Lighting will be helpful, but I don't see any police facilitation here. Additionally, Mr. Armstrong, isn't there a plan or a hope down the road that that whole street will be connected now that we have the underpass under the freeway, that we have a full-on bridge that completes that street across the Sycamore Creek?
Well, I think, then that we're talking about at even a larger expense if you
Yes.
wanted to do a full bridge across.
Right. But what I'm saying is that why would we build a pedestrian bridge when we might have another bridge coming right behind it?
I think the likelihood of us getting the funding for a replacement bridge there is pretty unlikely. It's because it's, right now it's just a pedestrian bridge and it doesn't have the traffic volume that would allow us to be competitive for grant funding.
Right.
Well, I haven't looked at it, but I think we'll be very fortunate to get 80% funding to replace even the pedestrian bridge. I think that's how we looked at it.
Well, that bridge is still serviceable, correct? Right. And I've been down there and just watched, and there are not many people that come across there, and to think that we'd make the bridge bigger would therefore attract more folks seems to put the cart before the horse, honestly. So I would ask that we vote separately on this, and frankly, I don't think it's an expense we should take on. We are taking on a lot of expenses, and it would be nice to do this, yes, if it were in that climate, it would be nice, but I don't think we're in that fiscal climate. So I appreciate what you all
Want to
have
vote separately
to
on
say.
it? Okay. Just to follow up, if we were to get the grant, would that come back to council to approve accepting the grant money? And so we'd have another chance at that point to look at the project and decide whether or not we wanted to accept the grant money, or does it just happen?
Yes, the council would have to accept the grant money and appropriate it into our capital program.
Okay, so assuming we get the funding, you said it's 80 or 90% funded
Be
this way?
80% funding if we
80.
get it. And my staff is really good at looking for grants to match and not have to use city funds. So we would continue to do that if we were to get the grant.
I appreciate Mr. Hotchkiss looking at the bigger picture. I think we have another opportunity to make that determination. We don't know if we have the grant or not, and we can see the bigger picture if we get the funding, but that's just my opinion. Mr. Rouse?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What's the proposed amount of lighting that would be added to the area? Or has that been specified?
It hasn't been specified. We submitted an application. We know we need to do lighting on either end of the bridge as well as on the bridge itself to open it up. We've done some improvements in terms of trimming back vegetation and changing the bulbs, but it's just really inadequate lighting in the area. So use this opportunity to improve the lighting approaching the bridge as well as on the bridge.
Yeah, because I know the lighting we did just completed in the Lower Haley project is really beneficial to the neighborhood, so I would definitely be interested in that aspect of it.
Yeah, we wouldn't just do the bridge. We would do the corridor leading up to the bridge on both sides, lighting. We would not just do lighting on the bridge. We would do the corridor leading up to the bridge to make sure there's adequate lighting to make it a better nighttime walking and biking facility for our residents. This is a heavily pedestrian and bicycle area in our community. We do know that. I just don't have counts because we haven't done a formal count on the bridge.
But we could go forward with some lighting improvements there, which probably are needed, without doing the bridge.
Yes, we certainly could do that.
Yeah.
Mr. House?
Oh, thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this. Maybe it's good to bring a little historical piece into it, because your rendition goes back only so far. But in 1993, when we did the East Side Study Group report and looked at this entire area, this came up as a prominent issue and the need to reconnect that, and primarily for pedestrians and bicyclists. There was some concern. Some really want to see that street go through, like you were saying, Mr. Hotchkiss, and others were concerned that would then make that really a thoroughfare when right now the neighborhood's kind of peaceful without it. So, but then again, later when the group began to look at the traffic issues in the area, which is a few years later, that came up again. And then when we looked at the monies that were for the neighborhood traffic management improvement program, we had X amount of dollars. I can't remember, it was $300,000 or $400,000 that was possibly with an Adopt a Schools grant. Which neighborhood will we be able to address first? And that area was real high on my list, and I didn't prevail. It went over to the St. Francis neighborhood instead. But at that time, once again, these movements from Salinas across over to Milpa Street were really high on the priority. And then even since then, we've done creek cleanups in the area. And every time we do a creek cleanup, the big issue about it being a congregating place and a dark place and a very kind of unsafe place where people are using it to do bad things, the neighbors are really concerned. And I remember Ray and Norma Lopez, who have the little market there, had it at Cacique. They were very strong about how important the improvements needed to be there. So I was so glad to see this come on our radar. And once again, maybe the thing that would assuage the concerns is this is one of those matching fund opportunities where we contribute, 10 to 20%? Yeah.
20%. That's
20% altogether, and maybe we could qualify for some assistance with the Measure A. I think this is one of those opportunities that we do want to take if we can possibly get it. So I would be very strongly supportive of this. And I hope that background helps a little bit, because this has been really around in the community as an issue for a great long time.
Let me clarify. Actually, it's a 10% matching funds. And as you mentioned, Councilmember House, this came from the community, and it's been on the books I've been with the city for 11 years now, and it was on the books way before then. We did apply for a grant back in 2001 to replace the vehicle bridge, and it didn't score very well at all, and the cost has only gone up in terms of that. And we're not optimistic that we'll be able to get money to put a bridge project in, vehicle bridge, and like the other bridges that the engineering is working on, this does not qualify for that pot of funding because it's not an existing vehicle bridge.
Madam Mayor, if I may, Mr. Allen, remember we were discussing this in the context of the Cacique undercrossing, which has just been completed. The sort of the master plan for the area was to really enhance the pedestrian movements, give them an alternative besides going through the Carpinteria Street Highway 101 interchange. And so this was part of the idea, was to reconnect that neighborhood all the way through, because this bridge was damaged when they built Highway 101 way back in the day. and to get it restored along with the Cacique undercrossing was part of a larger vision for the area.
Ms. Murillo, and then Mr. Hotchkiss.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Mr. Hotchkiss, or Councilmember Hotchkiss, it's a place where our street youth congregate, and it is a place where infrastructure improvements, I think, would raise the level of expectation of behavior as well. And I'm working with some of the residents in a mobile home park that's nearby, and with some of the area residents. This is an opportunity to, when the construction is done, to engage youth in doing some of the plantings and doing some of the creek watch, or, you know, I'm always trying to get these young people to take ownership of different parts of their neighborhood, and changing that footbridge from owned by the gangs to owned by the neighborhood is really important. So I would follow what staff is recommending, and to tell you the truth, I was shocked that it was $1 million. It's like, how do these costs add up?
$1.5 million.
Yeah. But I think it is worth it, and I'm glad for Councilmember House's memory of all of that good urban planning that was done over the years. So I do support it. I appreciate your position. There's so much at stake there in the heart of the east side there. Thank you.
Mr. Hotchkiss.
Well, your arguments are well intended, and I certainly don't really disagree with them, except we do have an existing bridge there that works just fine. And so we're not, contrary to what was said previously, it's not as if we didn't do this, we wouldn't have free flow traffic on foot and bicycle, because we do have that now. Oddly enough, that bridge is not graffitied at all. At least it wasn't in recent days. So it may be a gang hangout, but it doesn't appear to be. The houses on both sides are quite nice, and it's good that I agree that the street isn't connected. But in light of our fiscal situation, I think it's a little foolish to go ahead when we don't have to. If we didn't go ahead with this now, in a year, could we go ahead with it? It's the same situation. We go back and say, well, we want to get a grant.
Well, the next time the Caltrans does a call for a project for the bicycle transportation account, we could apply for it in the future.
Okay. And do they do that? When do they do that? Yearly?
It's yearly, but the time of the year varies, and I'm not sure if this is tied up in the transportation bill that was just passed by Congress last week, and this money might not even be available in the future because of.
So I think I won't prevail on this, but I do think that we should be more fiscally conservative than this indicates we're being. So I would vote against it.
Can I have a motion for item 4 then?
So moved, Madam Mayor.
There's a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, thank you. There was a request for speaker on item number 13. Could you read item number 13?
Item 13, Santa Barbara Zoological Gardens lease.
Thank you. Mr. Block, and then Mr. Stroud. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, distinguished members of the council. I don't get here to speak to you very often, but I could not let this opportunity pass. This is a milestone in the history of the zoo. We are about to celebrate 50 years in operation, with basically completing our second 25-year city lease. Reading the language of the first lease, it was not clear that anyone believed that the zoo would succeed, but we have succeeded and are looking forward to entering into a new lease with the city. At this point, the zoo is the second most attended museum-type venue on the Central Coast. Per the Business Times, we are the #1 day trip destination in Santa Barbara. This is people outside of Santa Barbara County, per the Conference and Visitors Bureau. We are very fortunate that our $8.3 million operating budget is covered through earned revenue. And that is pretty unique for zoos, aquariums, museums, anywhere. So we're very fortunate. All of the work on site is supported certainly by a huge cadre of volunteers, which includes our board of directors and 100 regular employees. We owe our success over the years first and primary to our community for incredible support, and this goes back to the support and encouragement that we've received from city departments, elected officials, city professionals, and the volunteers. First and foremost, the Parks and Recreation Commission and the professional staff have been great partners in working with us. The Planning Commission and professional staff, and Historic Landmarks Commission, though that has not always been an easy path to follow. The reality is that we've always ended up in a better place with all of our programs. We enjoy incredible community support, and because of that, in the past 10 years, we've been able to invest just under $15 million in improvements to the zoo. We are on the cusp of going forward with a $7.5 million project for a new education building that will break ground on September 4th. So as we look forward to our next 50 years, I just wanted to express my gratitude to the support of the community, the investment of our donors, and all the work of our volunteers. And for the record, there is no other community of this size that has a zoo of this caliber anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Carl Straub.
Thank you, Mayor, and council members. I'm a homeowner in the East Beach Townhomes Association, so we owe our heritage back to the child estate, as does the zoo. My concern is really about the due process that has occurred recently on the change of lease. I want to commend, first of all, Rich Block, who we've talked on numbers of occasions because I'm the one that's always complaining about the noise from the zoo. We appreciate the zoo. We like the zoo. We love the concept of a zoo in East Beach. It's a great opportunity. But I think the zoo trends beyond that when it starts talking about weddings and private parties every weekend, every month from June till October. It is a noise attraction. And while Rich does talk about $8 million being the zoo budget, about $1.2 million of that comes from private parties. The other concern I have is that we have moved from, and I'm not an expert in the municipal code of Santa Barbara, but we seem to have moved from a public park to a regional park. And the original lease described in section 16 talked about extended uses and other uses of the park, had limitations in the form of alcoholic beverages. The foundation may permit charitable nonprofit organizations to use the zoo, such as Spanish Days, events to raise funds for the zoo. We're now seeing a lease that in section 5.04 describes that the use should be the widest use possible with a regional park, including weddings, private parties, and shall include without limitation making the premises available for public, private events, weddings, receptions, conferences, group meetings, fundraising. And all of this seems to me a little beyond what the charter of the 501c3 organization of the Zoological Foundation is. And I guess what we're looking for is a little more dialogue around the lease and the events of the lease. It is a 35-year lease. The current lease doesn't expire till December. So it's not a matter of urgency that somehow this lease would, if not approved today, would not have plenty of time to understand it. And lastly, I guess I would say I'm not trying to intercede myself in the council in their decision as to what a valid lease is or what the city attorney considers a valid lease. I would also like to commend Nancy Rapp, who I've had discussions with, who has been very frank and open in the Parks and Rec Department about this. But I don't think the homeowners, which comprise 80 homeowners in East Beach Townhome Association, the Ellis Gorrie Alton Townhome Association, and the impacts around it that we see on traffic and other items, which is identified in the lease that comes primarily from these type of events. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. To the council, any discussion on this item, or is there a motion for the consent calendar? Mr. Hotchkiss?
Mr. Wiley or Mr. Armstrong, are there limitations on private events that can be held there?
I guess Mr. Wiley or Mr. Armstrong also, I think he was talking about 5.04, which is on page 4.
Ms. Rapp,
see at the
maybe?
bottom of that talks about the municipal code as well. So, Ms. Rapp?
Madam Mayor and Councilmember Hotchkiss. So just as a point of fact, and this is something that I shared earlier with Councilmember Hotchkiss when he asked, the city designated the zoo as a regional park back in 1995. And all of the activities that are described within the lease are allowed within a regional park. All of the activities that were mentioned are currently being done at the zoo in their current existing operation. So there is no expansion of that, but that is clearly what is allowed. And I guess the other thing that I would add, and this is part of the discussion that Mr. Straub and I had yesterday, I think that it's increasingly challenging for Elings Park, City Parks and Recreation, and the zoo, and when you have a primary purpose of recreation and you are augmenting your revenue to offset your operational costs by renting parts of your facilities, which again those activities are allowed within the description of the various park categories. But it becomes more and more of a necessity, and this was part of the challenge when we were looking at some of the issues related to Elings Park. And I think it's some of the challenges related to the zoo, and it's part of the challenges that we have with our city parks. So it's kind of a fact of needing to have them to help exist financially, but managing their use so that we're still good neighbors. But I do not perceive this lease to be a real expansion beyond what they are currently doing. I don't think they're really capable of expanding beyond that. But that would be my perspective.
Do they have evening hours when they have to shut down by, do you recall?
I would probably, in this lease, it doesn't get into operational hours, but if you want to know what they currently do, then I would defer to Rich Block to answer that.
Okay.
Mr. Block, I think yes?
Yeah.
Come on up to the podium.
Let me give you a kind of a historical perspective on this. When we were preparing to develop the California Trails Complex, which opened in 2009, all of the work on that stopped in 2004, and we spent 3 years doing an environmental review of the zoo, and part of that environmental review were the operations, and one of the things that planning staff wanted to see was the scope and scale of activities on the hilltop. The kind of background level of activity that we were experiencing leading up to the approval of the environmental document in 2007 is no different from where we are today. We lost a little bit of ground in 2008 and 2009 because of the construction of California Trails and the fact that it pretty much eliminated the use of the hilltop for events. But with that completed, we basically, we had maxed out in 2005 and 6 when we were compiling those numbers. There really were no opportunity. You couldn't squeeze more things into that. And the point that we made at that time was the developments on the hilltop really were to just make things better. I mean, in the broadest terms, we really cannot afford to grow. We can't have our attendance continue to grow like larger institutions. We really need to kind of hold it steady simply because the experience to us is such an important part of who we are that too many people, basically you shoot yourself in the foot. You destroy the experience because you kind of open it up. So the level of activities right now is on par with the level that the planning staff reviewed during the environmental review process. That's part of where it is. Our operation, the expense of operating, for us now, 64% of our operating budget is payroll. And so every single piece of the zoo operations, from the train to private events to special events to memberships to retail to food service, all of those come together to allow us to meet those expenses.
Is there a cap on private events or acoustic
well, the
amplification?
The cap on acoustics are the city, the ordinance, noise ordinance. And there are times where we have problems with that, and that can be because someone didn't check something. A disc jockey got a little too enthused. A band wanted to hear themselves a little louder. But we've used this opportunity working with Carl to implement a number of strategies, including the requirement of sound blankets anytime that a stage is used for amplified sound. So whether it's a DJ or a band, we've already ordered them at the areas to be wrapped in sound blankets. We've ordered additional sound blankets for a couple of other places where we're still trying to deal with the sound management. A very enthused and accommodating employee responding to a phone call that Carl placed over the prior weekend, jumped into it so seriously that they changed things on the sound system so much that the problem got worse rather than better. And so we're bringing back acoustic engineers to go over the whole system again to kind of fine-tune it. We had 5 points of sound measurement along the perimeter of the zoo. That's been increased to 8. We were very sensitive to elevation. Carl has a balcony in his townhome, so we wanted to make sure that we were measuring sound at levels that were comparable to where his condominium would be. We got a lot of things in place. We're just in the process of knocking down a retaining wall that was basically a big planter along the train route that we could determine served no real purpose to reduce the amount of reflected sound that gets created by the train going through. So we've used this as an opportunity to put together, I think, a fairly aggressive program to be responsive. I've asked our board of directors to review materials to come up actually with a stated, I hate to borrow from an insurance company, but to create a good neighbor policy under which we can put all of these operational requirements at the zoo. So, I mean, I view this as an opportunity for us to become better neighbors. We already know what the noise ordinance is, and we can measure to that. We've got measuring points. We've ordered additional meters so that more people can have access to those, and we also created a recording spot online that's accessible to any of the managers all the time, that shows the readings at various times at all of the locations. So people have responded very positively to this, to the point of allowing for the dismissal of employees that consistently have to be reminded to not do certain things, or the kind of blacklisting of bands or disc jockeys that consistently give us a problem when they're asked to reduce the volume of their performance.
Has sound been the major problem, not light?
I think it is. The prior to Mr. Straub's comments, most of the comments from East Beach have had to do with visual components. And so we've had a pretty aggressive program of trying to button up the visual vistas of the zoo to green those up. We've got a couple of things that we're going to do. We have one owner or resident in an end unit. East Beach we've never heard from them, but in doing all of our site analysis, we realized that we could improve their view just by extending a kind of a screen of vine growth about 10 feet. So we've put a frame in to allow the vines to continue to grow to block out some visual things. So there are 3 parts to our kind of good neighbor program. One is sound management. The other is this kind of view management, vista management. Third part is parking and traffic. And our guest services director he's started to do a couple of things. One is for some of the larger events, we contract with Santa Barbara Trolley and have made an arrangement with the Doubletree Hotel to be able to park vehicles there and bus people back and forth at no cost to them. They pay for the parking at the Doubletree, of course, but there's no cost to be shuttled back and forth. Also to station an employee with a handheld stop sign back by the exit drive of Ellis Royale, which seems to be the kind of the biggest point in terms of traffic. In terms of parking management, that's a huge issue, and that really, to kind of tackle that, you would have to get all of the hotels in the area, all of the activities on East Beach, all the activities at Dwight Murphy. I mean, it's a lot of people that use that area for parking. So the Dwight Murphy lot, parking along Ninos, parking all along the back side of the park adjacent to the hotels and residences. That's a bigger issue than I mean, we're glad to be part of the solution, but the kind of the coordination and everything else can't really fall on the zoo because we're just part of the community that uses that area.
Doesn't your lot usually suffice for your patrons?
During the summer, like right now, we've eliminated some parking spots because of zoo camp. And even with that, with staff parking and visitors, it pretty well does it. Weekends, it pushes a lot of people out. And part of it is that, we have a fee-based lot. So people that aren't members often choose to park on the street so that they don't have to pay for parking.
Go back to my previous question. Is there a cutoff at night for parties, private parties?
Typically, most parties should be ending about 10 o'clock at night.
Is that
and that's when the noise ordinance cuts from 60 to 50 decibels.
right? And you try to observe that?
Absolutely. The other part, and it was brought to our attention through a discussion with Mr. Straub, was the noise created by the breakdown teams. And so we've been working with our private events to try to implement practices. So after an event, because we're going to open the next morning after an event, that the breakdown teams are sensitive to noise generation. So things like steel on steel when they're breaking down a bandstand structure, something like that, those are things that we're trying to get them to avoid. No music for the breakdown crew, things like that.
Very thorough answers. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Mr. Rouse?
Mr. Block, real briefly, in your EIR,
Come back up.
thank you. In your EIR, assuming had some public outreach component to it as well, in terms of public noticing and outreach meetings, that type of thing. Did you meet with other neighbors during that whole process going forward?
I met with the homeowners association for both East Beach and Ellis Royale, and then they were noticed. I mean, they got postcard notices that we had to send out for that. And then, of course, during the actual beginning of the development, the construction, everything was posted on site, so people had a number to call and if they had questions or concerns. So, yeah, that component was there.
Enforcement and compliance to the noise ordinance. I'm sure we're going to hear a few letters about that from other parts of the city. With that, thank you.
Yeah.
Very thorough presentation.
Leo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I'm glad to hear that the noise ordinance is in effect here, and it sounds like you're adhering to it and working with all the things that you described. I'm happy to hear that. We have a person who complains about noise from Earl Warren Showgrounds, and I think he claims that the houses were there before the showgrounds, and I'm not sure what came first, the zoo or this residential use, and maybe even now it doesn't matter because you guys have to live together. We have no control over Earl Warren Showgrounds apparently, and the helipad at the hospital is causing a lot of people trouble. So I see we're a small town getting smaller. And so I would encourage the zoo to do what you can to comply with all the rules. And I don't know what to say to you, except I put up with a lot of noise. The Santa Barbara Bowl creates noise. So, but I'm listening to you, and this is the first time I've heard your concern. So I haven't done any research, but I'm happy to meet with you and talk with you or your other neighbors if there's something else that can be done. But I think I would go ahead with the lease at this point, Madam Mayor.
So does anyone need to vote on this separately? Or is there a motion for the rest of the consent calendar?
Madam Mayor?
Yep.
I move the
Mr. House?
consent calendar. I will make a comment, though, on this item briefly. Appreciate neighbors' concerns and hopefully the cooperative working relationship. I saw the two of you at least nod to one another, and there seems like there's some collegiality here. Let's keep that going because it's really the way we're going to succeed in this particular situation. And I thank the neighbors, and I thank Mr. Block. Thank you for your thorough concern and consideration of those concerns.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you very much. That concludes the consent calendar. Move on to item number 18.
Item 18, participation in Nextdoor neighborhood website.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council. My name is Nina Johnson. I'm the Assistant to the City Administrator. And today I wanted to go over a tool that staff is proposing to use to help improve communication within neighborhoods and also to help the city improve communication directly to residents. Through this presentation, I wanted to review the city's current communication methods and some of the challenges we face, discuss the potential use of Nextdoor, how we could use it as the city to communicate with residents. I'm joined by Justine Fenwick from Nextdoor, and she's going to talk more about how the site actually works and demonstrate how residents could use the site. And then we are also here with staff. We can answer questions that you may have. Just to take a step back and think about the city's communication goals, really we're trying to help the public understand our city programs and services, provide project updates, help them understand community events, and provide a lot of information about from quite a few areas from 10 different departments. We're trying to provide clear and consistent messages through a variety of information sources. We face a few challenges. I won't go through all of them, but just to highlight a few, we have a vast amount of communication content, a lot of topics and messages that can be, frankly, a little overwhelming for the general audience. We have project updates, we have emergency bulletins, emergency information, crime updates. We have a world of public education, tips, advice, best practices to share. We have service updates, a large body of content, basically, and messages that we send to the public, coming, again, from all departments. And what we find is people prefer to receive information from different sources in a variety of formats. We can't rely on a handful of communication methods to get information to the public. More and more, we have to see how the public is getting information and be in many of those places if we want people to receive that information. Our communication methods, we recognize, are really in transition, and they have been for a while. Electronic formats are replacing print. Social media is being used more widely, although not by everyone, but it's definitely being used more and more. And staff's really been taking steps to enhance and expand all of our current communication tools, citywide and at department and program levels. This is a quick glimpse of a variety of different communication methods that we currently use to get information out to the public. Each of these areas we could probably spend time on, but this was just to give a quick perspective of all the different avenues that people could be getting information from us. So media releases, we send media releases from all departments, and we get news coverage in the newspaper, radio, TV, internet news sites. Our city website is a great source of information on all of our city programs and services. We have City TV that does meeting coverage for this meeting and many other advisory groups, special programming, and our TV scroll that puts events and calendar updates. Direct mail, in some cases we use direct mail to reach residents. We have a handful of social media sites already, the Fire and Fire Facebook site at the airport, Parks and Recreation, and so forth. We have community meetings and workshops. We have booths at community events. We also have people who visit our counters and just call in for information. And we have a lot of newsletters, email and print newsletters. One of the most recent ones that we issued is the City News in Brief. That comes out each week, and that covers all of our city news and information. And we issue that electronically, so people get the news in their email. We also have, on the same way, print newsletters for people who like to get information in print. But basically, this is a glimpse of all of the different ways and methods that we're currently sending out information. And what you can see is that for the most part, these methods really reach a general audience. We're very limited in our ability to communicate with specific groups, to target communication to specific groups. And in this case, this afternoon, we're talking about neighborhoods, issues that are affecting residents in a specific neighborhood. When staff learned about Nextdoor, we were really intrigued by the potential for Nextdoor, especially for people who use social media, who like to use social media. We thought that this was a tool that could really help the city communicate with residents about issues affecting their neighborhoods. For example, we might send out a brush clearance schedule citywide, but then you might have residents who are living in a neighborhood in a high fire hazard area who are more interested in that schedule than in other parts of the city. These are some of the types of things that we could be sending out that affect some neighborhoods more than others. But this goal is really even secondary to providing neighbors with a venue to share information, share tips with one another. And really, this tool has the capability of building a sense of community in neighborhoods. It could really improve communication between neighbors so they can share information about different issues. This is a map of the city's neighborhoods as identified in the general plan. So in each of these neighborhoods, we have 32 different neighborhoods. Each of them have unique qualities and different information needs, different infrastructure in the neighborhoods. So as these neighborhoods are set up here, we have them also reflected in the Nextdoor site. So someone could participate in a social network in each one of these neighborhoods, and their conversations and their updates are shared only within that particular neighborhood, not outside the neighborhood. Staff has identified a number of different possibilities in terms of posting information on Nextdoor. We thought this would be a great avenue to send out construction updates, neighborhood planning and outreach. Surveys could be conducted if we needed to find out the views of a certain neighborhood on a certain issue or project. Event announcements like a community cleanup day, we could be posting on Nextdoor. Public safety bulletins that affect a certain neighborhood or group of neighborhoods, emergency information, and then other information that we think is really targeted specifically for a neighborhood or a group of neighborhoods. We demonstrated, we presented the Nextdoor tool to the Neighborhood Advisory Council in June, and they recommended that the city participate and start sharing information with neighborhoods through this avenue. From here, what I wanted to do is turn over the presentation to Justine, and she can go through how other cities are using Nextdoor and how it actually works for residents to get involved and sign up.
Thank you, Nina. Madam Mayor and council members. Oh, there we go. Terrific. Thank you so much for having me here. Let me just start by telling you a little bit about Nextdoor. Nextdoor is a young company. We're based in San Francisco, and we've been in business for about 18 months. We've spent our first year in product development, and our site has been available to the public for the last 6 to 8 months. In that time frame, we have had 3,500 neighborhoods start using Nextdoor sites, and we have 65 cities, primarily based in California, that have made Nextdoor sites available to all of their neighborhoods. Some of those cities, the big cities, include Riverside, Anaheim. Your neighboring cities, Goleta has rolled out Nextdoor, as has Ventura. the city of Ventura, a little south of you. The city of San Jose, which is our largest city to date, will be rolling out Nextdoor on National Night Out, and they will be using Nextdoor to really help support their Neighborhood Watch programs as well as other community neighborhood-based programs. What I have here is just a 90-second video that will give you kind of a quick snapshot of what is Nextdoor and how people are using it.
Have you ever needed...
Oops. Excuse me here. No, technology difficulties. Oh, excuse me. We're going to start it again. Let's see if we can do this a little better.
Have you ever needed to borrow a ladder, find someone to mow your lawn, or learn when local road repairs will wrap up? There are so many ways our neighbors can help us. But these days, most people don't know their neighbors or how best to contact them. It's difficult to ask for help and advice without being a bother. Nextdoor changes all that with free and private neighborhood websites that make it easy for neighbors to connect and talk about the issues that matter. It's an online place where you and your neighbors can ask questions, stay in the know, and exchange local help and advice. Here you can meet your neighbors, get recommendations for local services, and learn about neighborhood events. Whether you want to spread the word about a new park, find an owner for that bookcase in your garage, or be alerted of recent crimes in your area, Nextdoor makes it easy to keep up with everything going on in your neighborhood. All recommendations are organized and archived, so next time you need a trusted dentist or electrician, you can find a great one in seconds. Nextdoor is a secure website where all members must verify that they live in the neighborhood. You can be confident that your communications stay within a trusted environment designed just for you and your neighbors. Getting started is easy. With just a few clicks, you can get up and running with Nextdoor for your neighborhood. As your neighbors join the website, you build a stronger and safer neighborhood. When neighbors start talking, everyone benefits. To get a Nextdoor website for your neighborhood, go to nextdoor.com.
Great. Nina just asked me to talk about why our city is adopting Nextdoor. The primary reason why cities are actually adopting Nextdoor is they're really wanting to bring back a sense of community to their neighborhoods. The city of Riverside is a large city, and they have a movement to try and create villages within their cities. We also see a number of cities, like the city of Ventura, which wanted to revitalize their Neighborhood Watch program. They had 200 residents participating in their Neighborhood Watch program. They rolled out Nextdoor. They now have 28 neighborhoods that have started Nextdoor sites, and they have over 1,000 residents that are using Nextdoor in support of Neighborhood Watch. But let me just step back and just say, again, the primary reason why cities are adopting Nextdoor is they do want to bring back this sense of community. And the reason is that they have found is that when there's a lot of research that says when neighbors know one another, they create better neighborhoods. Those neighborhoods are safer, they're healthier, and they're happier neighborhoods. The sad thing is that most of us don't know our neighbors, but those neighborhoods that do have online tools to connect their neighbors actually do know more of their neighbors, and they talk to them more face to face. So how are people using Nextdoor today? They're using it to track down babysitters. They're using it to find the plumber. They're using it to discuss the latest break-in or the emergency response plan. Cities are using it to help support their neighborhood watch programs. They're using it to help support their neighborhood emergency response plans. The city of Poway, which is located a little south of here in the San Diego foothills, they rolled it out to support their neighborhood emergency response groups. The city of Poway has a lot of fires, and so they use this as a tool to keep everyone informed up to date on the latest emergency issues. They also, a number of cities like the city of Napa uses it to send out resident surveys. The city of Napa has, like Nina mentioned, any number of online tools. They use their Facebook page to communicate out information that they would like shared with both the residents and tourists. And then they use their Nextdoor site to really communicate just with their residents. This is a screenshot of the actual Nextdoor site. A couple of things to note here. If your residents know how to use Facebook, if they know how to use email, they'll know how to use Nextdoor. Nextdoor is both an email interface and a web interface, so people have the choice of how they want to interact with it. The second thing to note about Nextdoor is that it is what we call a geographically based social network, and what that means is that only people who live in the neighborhood can actually join the Nextdoor neighborhood. And we do go through a verification process. So when people sign up for the site, they do have to verify that they're using their real name and they are at their real address. And we do that in one of four ways, via postcard. We can verify over the phone. We can verify with a credit card, or we can verify them through a previously verified neighbor. So we often get asked is how does Nextdoor plan on supporting the site? Nextdoor is free. It's free to the residents. It's free to the city. But we will be charging local businesses for advertising on the site. We do view Nextdoor as a local community building tool, and we think of local community as a three-legged stool. We think of the first leg of local community as really connecting neighbors to their neighbors, and that's where we spent most of our time to date and on the development of our features. The second leg of the stool is really connecting the neighbors to their local government, and then the final leg of the stool is connecting neighbors to their local businesses. So just to summarize the business model, Nextdoor will be free to the users. It's free to the neighborhoods. It's free to the cities. We will never sell people's personal information. People are very concerned about how their personal information is used these days. And we will never bombard our users with pop-up ads or irritating banner ads. We are hoping to work with local businesses and offer services that we think the neighborhoods will really appreciate hearing about. And just to remind you, we have not built any of these features to date. We do not have any of the advertising features on our site today, but we do anticipate them coming online within the next year. So finally, I just want to wrap up and just say that the Nextdoor has been fully endorsed by the National Association of Town Watch, and we are their technology provider of choice, and a number of neighborhoods across the United States who are participating in National Night Out are being encouraged to use Nextdoor. So I'm going to end here. I can take questions, and if anybody wishes, we can go into a short demo of the actual site.
Thank you. Nina, did you have anything else? We have one public comment speaker, too. No? Why don't we go to public comment real briefly first? Mary Mender, come on up. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I just wanted to say that in the real world, in my neighborhood, we're using the Nextdoor website. And I can give you a lot of real-world examples of how it's been useful to us and made our community better. One happened just this weekend where we had in my neighborhood, there's a green belt that's shaped like a giant triangle, and we call it Triangle Park. And we put out on Thursday that we were going to have a gathering in that park on Sunday. And on Sunday, a lady came to the park who I've lived near for 12 years, and I'd never met her. And she was at the park, and she was so happy to have that outreach and have a reason to come out and meet her neighbors. And she has a lot of reasons why she never comes out, but I hope to see more of her. And this was super powerful because she's 80 and she's alone. And now we all know this, and we can do more outreach to her. So that was very powerful. But also, I can see how it can be useful with the city of Santa Barbara communicating to certain regions of the city with pertinent information that apply only to that area of the city. Because in my daily life, I move around in about a 5-mile radius, and I don't go to certain areas. So if I knew that something was happening in my neighborhood, I could adjust my day, and or if I knew about certain events that were happening, or road closures, or any piece of information that was relative to my community, I could see could be very useful. So I think this would be a very healthy thing to do for Santa Barbara. While we're a small town, we could benefit greatly by knowing each other better, I think, and I can see how this could be a very powerful tool for our different communities. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, back to council. Mr. Hotchkiss.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hi. I just got some user questions.
Sure.
If you sign in, sign up, et cetera, can you opt out also?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And is there anybody that is sort of the webmaster for the neighborhood, to monitor, so I hate to say appropriateness, but you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Each Nextdoor site has what we call a Nextdoor lead. They're similar to a Yahoo group moderator or a Google group moderator. They can remove postings if they feel that they are inappropriate. We also have on every posting on the site has a little flag next to it, and anyone in the community and the online community can flag a posting, and we will be notified at our customer support, and the lead of the neighborhood will also be notified.
So you make a determination then if it's appropriate or not?
Appropriate or not.
Typically, how many subscribers do you have in a city, or I mean, it's got to be hugely different, but
Yeah, absolutely.
neighborhood.
So within so we have 3 types of neighborhoods we have within a city. We have neighborhoods that have never launched a site. We have neighborhoods that what we call are in pilot. That means they have less than 10 users on the site. And then we have launch neighborhoods. Some of these launch neighborhoods are up to over 1,000 members in various neighborhoods and cities. So they can be very big. Some of the neighborhoods, depending on the number of households within that neighborhood, can also be very small. If the households are only 100 households in that neighborhood, you'll see sometimes only 100 people on the site.
And how do you get it started in a neighborhood if it's new there and nobody knows anything about it?
Yeah, a couple different ways. Most of the time people hear about it through word of mouth. Right now in Santa Barbara, you have about 50% of all of your neighborhoods have started Nextdoor sites. And then often in our city programs, the cities will actually let their residents know that Nextdoor is now available. And they'll do that through their usual communication channels, through any of their regular emails or newsletters. So
In the case of our neighborhoods, often they have their own neighborhood association. Would this parallel that, or is there a way it could be complementary, or?
I think the way that we have actually designated the neighborhoods parallels the neighborhood association boundaries. So a lot of neighborhood associations we see move over onto Nextdoor and start using Nextdoor as their primary communication tool.
I see.
And as a matter of fact, that's probably one of the, I wouldn't say it's the primary reason, but it's definitely one of the reasons why a lot of cities adopt us, is they do have a number of neighborhood associations, and these neighborhood associations are all using different tools. So they'll have some neighborhood associations on Yahoo Groups, some neighborhood associations on Google Groups, some of them are even using homegrown websites, and there's no real way to coordinate or reach out to them effectively. And so Nextdoor allows you to put all of your neighborhoods and associations on one website, and then the city has special tools where they can communicate out to those neighborhood associations.
This may be putting the cart before the horse, but let's say in the instance of fire in the hills, how could we use this? Have you thought that through? How would we use the Nextdoor?
Nextdoor could be used as a tool, in addition to several others, to get out information quickly. And that information could be sent directly to the people who are participating.
Could it be plugged into our emergency center, or am I asking too many questions right now?
No, we use several tools right now to provide emergency information through Channel 18, email blasts, media releases. Nextdoor could easily become one of the tools that we use for information.
Ms. Murillo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Nina, I'm forgetting your, Johnson. The staff report says city staff and several departments have reviewed the Nextdoor website and expressed an interest in supporting the site. Which departments are those from your list? Maybe Public Works would be one with construction stuff?
Right. Madam Mayor, Councilmember Murillo, I'm joined here by a few staff, but we basically had a committee review the site and go through some of the different advantages, disadvantages of using this to post information. So I'll just kind of run through a list of staff who reviewed it. So Parks and Recreation, our neighborhood outreach staff, the planning division, so looking at how this could be used for neighborhood outreach, neighborhood planning efforts, transportation planning staff, our emergency services manager, looking at how we could disseminate emergency information also for CERT training purposes. Yes.
Thank you very much. And I have concerns about using this for a couple of reasons. First of all, in emergencies, sometimes the power goes out. So coming from radio news, I'm always telling people, you know, keep batteries in your radio. And I know that the city has a way of disseminating information through radio when the power goes out. And along those lines, not everyone has a computer or internet access. Not all of our population, right, is in the electronic age. And the information is not offered in Spanish. I think we talked about that at the Neighborhood Advisory Council, but there are ways to translate Spanish online. And actually, that's not your problem, but maybe something that those of us who care about the low-income or monolingual communities, you know, can address in another way. I'm also paranoid that the lead, you know, maybe somebody with maybe overzealous with religious beliefs or political beliefs or beliefs about housing densities or selling Amway products. Okay, so my question is, how do we control when someone, the lead, is abusing, because it seems like they're in a seat of power, and what happens when someone is abusing that power?
So great questions. Let me start with the lead question. So first off, a Nextdoor site can have multiple leads. So we don't need to have just one person who is the lead. The second thing is we do work very closely with our neighborhood. So if anyone complains to customer support, we do have a customer support team that's on 24 hours. We will investigate any issue that they bring to our attention. For the most part, we don't have a lot of problems with our leads, but if we did, we would investigate and see if we needed to remove them. We do have guidelines that we do ask all of our members to follow, and those guidelines are what we call sort of neighborly guidelines. So no personally harassing comments on the site, no blatant advertising on the site, no sort of Amway pushing sales on the site. So we can remove leads or other inappropriate members if need be. I think the third thing that is interesting about this site, because we ask people to use their real identity and they are speaking to their neighbors, we do see that most of the discourse on the site is incredibly civil. So we don't actually get a lot of complaints to our customer support about people abusing their privilege to talk to their neighbors. Secondly, we are implementing what we call a mute feature, and everyone will have the ability to mute anyone. So I think that will really take care of any of those maybe irritating but not necessarily inappropriate postings that you might find on this site. Thirdly, I did want to address the Spanish issue. We are working on localizing our site, making our site available in other languages. That is a complex project, and we are a young company, so we will not be releasing that soon, but we are fully aware that we need to do that, and we are working on that.
Thank you. And my final question, Madam Mayor, I think it's for Mr. Armstrong. Is there any kind of contractual relationship we would have with Nextdoor? In which case, do we have an escape clause? I'm paranoid in case this doesn't work.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Murillo, there isn't a contractual arrangement with Nextdoor. The city doesn't host the site. There are currently about 350 people registered right now in the city of Santa Barbara on the site, and they're already sharing information and providing updates to one another. So really what we would be doing is have the ability, if you were interested in participating, have the ability to start posting information on behalf of the city. So we wouldn't have any agreement or hosting responsibility for the site.
Thank you.
And I would add, obviously, we'll watch how it goes and the types of postings. You know, it will be one of many tools that we'll use to communicate with residents. If we found out that, you know, things weren't going the way that they're being represented, you know, we would then, you know, if we really thought it was, you know, not going the right way, we would just not use it as a vehicle that we would use to communicate with residents if, you know, we felt that, you know, it reflected badly on the city.
So just to follow up, Nextdoor already exists. This is not our thing. You're just asking us to put out information. So I guess we'd have some form of administrator privileges on the website because we're right now in one particular neighborhood called Downtown, right? We're not everywhere right now, but we'd be able to post things in all neighborhoods throughout the city depending on what's going on,
That's
which is
correct.
different than a typical user.
That's correct.
So that's allowed. So Nextdoor is giving the city of Santa Barbara special access to be able to post but not edit other people's.
No, the city
postings.
actually cannot. The city cannot actually see into any of the individual neighborhood sites. They can post out to those neighborhood sites, and they can see comments back to the city.
Okay.
But those sites are private to the neighborhoods.
So it's not like the city becomes a member of each neighborhood and seeing what's going on. We just put information out there and it gets posted in the appropriate spot.
That's correct.
That's what we're being asked to do. Okay. Mr. Rouse.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Fenner, you guys are a for-profit company, and you tend to make revenue and whatnot.
Yep.
So I'm a little, frankly, confused why we've got this in front of us on the agenda, to be honest with you, because you already exist. You don't need our permission. We're talking about dovetailing our information with the private for-profit company, which, you know, wouldn't be horrible. And I actually like the concept a lot. But if, for example, you chose some really unsavory advertising clients because they paid you a lot of dough, and we had our thing tied in with it, that may be problematic for us, and we'd find ourselves in another question or editing position. And I would think that if we did anything, we could maybe provide a link to our city websites that we already utilize, and perhaps in a cooperative way. But I'm not really. I'm just kind of curious how we got this in front of us today at this kind of presentation. Are we helping to present this private company to the city? I mean, what are we doing today?
I think what's being asked is the city staff is asking us, are we allowing city staff to post things for people's information on this particular website? Nextdoor is not asking us anything. They're asking.
Okay, so so that becomes an action item then? Are we actually doing something in terms of a motion and a vote on this then?
According to the agenda
Okay.
report, yes, we would be. But it's not like there's a contract with funding or anything like that. It's your time you're putting out information onto just like posting on Ed Hat, for example, right? I mean, but because this is a separate type of system and you need to get some kind of special administrator.
And I think, Madam Mayor and members of the council, we did struggle with, does this require council action? Because there's no contract that's in front of you. We felt, in other communities, for example, in Goleta, they went to their city council and they had something very similar to this, and most of the communities seem to be doing that. And we felt, we do believe, even though it's a private sector company, that this does, one of our goals through the general plan has been, look for ways to strengthen neighborhoods. We felt that this has, at least conceptually, has a lot of potential to do that, to build community in different neighborhoods. But, we do know that our residents are already joining it. They're participating in it. I think we felt that we wanted to come to you, present it, and also say, this is a tool that we were planning to use to communicate to different neighborhoods. and felt it was worth presenting it to the council. But it, if the council say no, we don't want to participate, what I expect is that this effort would still go on, and our neighborhoods would continue to join it.
No, and as I said, I like the concept and I like the idea of neighbors communicating because, as you said, they don't necessarily walk next door and meet each other anymore, and I totally get that. But if another neighborhood website all of a sudden rolled into town and it got developed and they said, why won't the city participate with that? Would we say, well, okay, we'll give you the same stuff? Or I'm obviously expanding beyond what we really have to talk about, but I would just, this just seemed awkward to me why we were even having this conversation. So,
Mr. House?
18 months in existence? I mean, actually, yeah, 3,000?
3,500.
It's pretty incredible. Congratulations. I read it more like, that the council approved the city's participation in Nextdoor neighborhood website to help city communicate with residents and neighborhood issues, services, and activities. And I appreciate the invitation, and I think it's a good thing for us to participate in this. And certainly if for some reason the city felt it wasn't working as a vehicle to get the word out on important issues, we could just pull it back and there's no harm done. And I like the idea. It feels really good. And clearly there's people that aren't on computers and all that, so okay, but those who are get a chance to benefit, just like with any of the other social media, and I appreciate the invitation to participate. I really would like it if Nextdoor would take our encouragement to develop the multilingual aspects. There could be want to really build community, begin to address the issues in the different languages, and people get to know and understand what's going on in their neighborhood. It's amazing how diverse we are, and there would be an opportunity to really strengthen community by allowing more people to participate that way. Certainly with the new translation tools that are out there, there may be opportunities to have somebody contribute in their own comfortable language, and then that be translatable by anybody else who's reading. So I think the new technology is going a long way in that direction. I did want to ask Mr. Alvarado, I see he's here today. Could you fill us in a little on what was discussed at the neighborhood level, neighborhood advisory committee level? Because I know that they had a chance to take a look at this, and it sounds like they're intrigued by the idea.
Mr. Alvarado?
And what kind of feedback you heard when you heard it presented?
Absolutely. Madam Mayor, Councilmember House, the Neighborhood Advisory Council did provide a little bit of scrutiny on the tool until it was further explained that a lot of the questions that you all asked were addressed as well. And so really what came out at the end of it was that they saw that as a tool to build capacity, especially in our low to moderate income neighborhoods where there is this belief of the digital divide, but at the same time we felt that it was a tool that could bring more people into the technology age by them knowing that this tool existed, and also to build synergy within the different neighborhoods and people getting to know their neighbors is all the different things that we've talked about. So I think the overall idea from the Neighborhood Advisory Council that it was a positive thing for our neighborhoods and just another tool to make Santa Barbara a better place.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. Well, I'm very supportive of this, and just in the interest of moving along, I know others want to comment. I will move the staff recommendation that the city participate in this, and I see there's no cost really associated. I appreciate the invitation, and it would be very interesting to see where this goes.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Mr. Hotchkiss, did you have another comment?
I do. I think you're guilty of bringing such a good thing here that everybody's doubting it. It's like what's really under the covers here. So it just sounds all good to me. And if it doesn't work, we'll find out. Mm-hmm. Meantime, at least one of our neighborhoods is already really happy with it. So this is sort of a win-win-win to me. And I hope my colleagues here will join me in Grant in saying yes.
Ms. Maria?
Thank you. Well, I was trying to figure out what Councilmember Rouse was concerned about. You mean selling ads to, you said unsavory, I think will you take political ads if and when I run for re-election? Have you?
That would be considered unsavory. That's correct.
Not that that's an unsavory ad, but
unsavory.
Do you have a rule on political ads?
We don't have it.
Seriously.
Let me just confess that we are still 12 months away from really developing a strong ad model yet. We are a PG site, so we do plan on not selling alcohol or cigarette ads on our site. We have been approached already by a number of local businesses that wish to advertise on our site. The types of local businesses that are interested in using us are, as you can imagine, real estate agents, building contractors, local insurance brokers. So this is how we're thinking that our advertising strategy will actually go. We will be trying to work primarily with local businesses, but we have not made any formal rules around political advertising.
Okay, well, I'll tell you my concerns.
That's a good thing.
And I'm sorry to be such a devil's advocate here today. So what if Public Works puts up a notice about something, and then it has a Kathy Murillo ad, and then there seems to be some cross of, it's not appropriate for the city to be involved in any political campaign. Or Spearmint Rhino, which I don't go to Spearmint Rhino, but I certainly support their operation, and they have a right to be in business. Medical marijuana, Mr. Rouse, medical marijuana dispensaries there's a divide, I would say, up here, who supports them and who doesn't. So see, there are some controversial ads that might come your way, and when you have on a screen juxtaposed City of Santa Barbara and Spearmint Rhino, I'm just saying that there might be some caution there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And do I sound like a square? I don't know.
It's sounding like we're asking the council to endorse Nextdoor, and we're not. We're asking the council to put information on a website. So it's not going to say City of Santa Barbara with the city seal. It's going to say there's construction on this street, or the light here is off, or there's the Oak Park neighborhood. There's the festival, and this is the hours of the festival. It's not like it's saying we support Nextdoor and we love them. I mean, we may, but I guess I also think, do you have concerns when different departments post on Facebook or on Twitter? Those are public companies. They're out there. Facebook has advertising on the side banners. The advertising depends on who's actually looking at the page, because they have but we have no control over that. We're just putting information out there. So to
I'm
me,
ready to
it's
vote
the
for it,
same
Mayor.
kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm ready to vote for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
We have
Madam
a motion.
Mayor,
Yes.
I was just going to mention, we have had some of these same issues that one of the departments has a Facebook page, and we noticed that some of the sites that were linked to them, had a message that was, probably wasn't appropriate, wasn't obscene or anything like that, but we felt it looked like someone could construe it as endorsing a certain, group. And so we talked to them, and we expect, those are the kinds of things we're going to have to deal with in the future. And if we felt, that somehow the city's message would look like we were endorsing a product or a political candidate or a certain cause, we would immediately go to these folks and say, hey, there's an issue here, especially if we got a complaint from a resident.
Okay, I think we're ready to vote on this. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, just very quickly. The city puts out press releases from time to time, and they're published in the newspapers, the online Newshawk, and the Sound, and all around, independent. And there's advertising all over the place. And effectively, we're being asked, offered the opportunity to send out information that would be in some almost similar kind of thing that's neighborhood specific. I think it's an opportunity to sort of press release or send out information like that about. And so to me, it lives in that world more than that we're endorsing something. It's just participating in something that's being used by everybody else.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any council member committee assignment reports? Ms. Maria.
Okay, thank you very much. On Sunday, I went to the Willbridge one-year anniversary celebration barbecue with homemade food. It was so good. And there was a lot of concern when it's a small apartment complex with mentally ill homeless living there. And there was a lot of concern when it was being permitted. And what I heard there at the barbecue was that they've had no trouble. So I'm here to report that all is smooth over there. And the mayor, I know, showed up a little bit later. I hope there was some food left for you because it was sure good. And I congratulate Willbridge for what they've done. And then I just went to a couple of other ceremonial things that I think the mayor will talk about. The reopening of the Central Library on Mondays, yay, and the Ensemble Theater and the New Vic Theater spectacle. So thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Mr. Rouse?
Not a report, Madam Mayor, but while we're on camera, I would like to acknowledge Mr. Hotchkiss' pants. If you would stand up, please, Mr. Hotchkiss, for us.
Please. We have to salute.
Happy 4th of July. Thank you, Mr. Hotchkiss.
Thank you.
Uncle Frank, I'm going to start calling you. Okay, can you read item number 19?
Item 19, conference with labor negotiator.
Okay, and we won't have anything to report out from there, so we will adjourn. Happy 4th of July for everyone tomorrow. And we will not have a council meeting next week, so we'll see you in 2 weeks.